In today's video, we are going to discuss the first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis. But first, please click the subscribe button and then click the bell icon so you can be notified when we release new videos. Also, if you like this video, please like it and share it with some friends that need to hear this message. The book of Genesis is the first part in what would come to be known as the Holy Bible. This story is divided into two main parts. There's chapters 1 through 11, which tells us about God and everything He created. Then we zoom right into Abraham's life, which is from chapters 12 onward, where he becomes the central figure. This means that it gives us insight into understanding what message the Bible as a whole has for us and how it introduces all different types of stories within its pages. The book begins with God taking the disorder and darkness described, and He brings out order, beauty, and goodness from this chaos by making a world where life can flourish. And so it was that God created humans. He made them in His image, and they became a separate category from all the other animals on earth, and their Hebrew name was Adam, or Adam. You see, when God creates humans, He makes them in His image and gives each one a unique place to play out on earth. So humans are given the responsibility of representing God by governing how things should go for those who live under God's rule. That means harnessing all its potential, caring deeply about what happens here on earth, and providing the necessary elements so more life can flourish. Let's continue. And He gives them a garden from which they begin to build this new world. Now the key is that humans have freedom of choice as they go about building their own lives and cultures in accordance with what's seen fit by God, represented by trees within the holy grounds like, let's say, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Up till now, the Lord has proved and defined what is good versus bad. Humans have been given the freedom and dignity to choose whether they will follow God's definition or not. They will either trust God's definition of good and evil, or they'll seize autonomy and make their own. When we defy God, it is like embracing death because you're turning away from the giver of life Himself. This is illustrated in the tree of life. In chapter 3, an unidentified figure is introduced. A snake enters into the story. The snake isn't given an introduction other than the fact that it's a thing created by God. It becomes apparent that is a being that is revolting against God and is determined to lead the human race into rebellion and death. The snake tells an alternative tale about the story of the tree, as well as the decision that was ultimately made. It said that gaining the wisdom of both good and evil isn't necessarily going to kill them, but it's actually the path to living and becoming gods themselves. The irony of this situation is tragic, since we are all aware that humans already have God's characteristics. They were created to be God's reflection. However, instead of trusting God, humans take on their own autonomy and take the wisdom regarding good and evil for themselves, and then in a flash, the entire story goes into chaos. Human relations were the first victims of this choice. The man and woman are struck with a sudden understanding of their own vulnerabilities. They can no longer trust each other, and so they realize they are naked, and they make clothes that hide their bodies from one another. The second casualty here is that the intimacy between God and human is totally lost. So Adam and Eve are afraid of God and run and hide from Him. When God finds them, they start blaming each other in reference to who disobeyed the Lord first. The story continues with a series of short poems where God declares his punishment on the snake and the humans for their actions. God tells the snake that despite your apparent victory, you are destined for defeat. You will eat dirt. God promises that one day a descendant will be born from the woman who will deliver a fatal strike to the head of the snake. This sounds like a great thing. However, this triumph will come at an expense, as a snake also will deliver a fatal attack to the heel of the descendant when it is crushed. As you follow the narrative so far, you can see the grace of God. The humans have been rebelling, but what does God do? He promises to save them. However, this doesn't negate the consequences of humans' choices. God tells them that either part of their life together, at home, or in the field is going to be rife with pain and grief due to their disobedience, all leading to their ultimate death. From here, the story begins to spiral downward. Chapters 3 through 11 tracks the ripple effect that is going out of the rebellion, and the human relationship is breaking down on every level. Let's look at the two brothers, Cain and Abel. Their story is one of overcoming adversity. Cain is obsessed with his brother, and Cain is tempted to murder his own brother. Then God warns him to not give into the temptation. However, he gives in anyway. He ends up murdering Abel in the field. Cain later creates a city in which brutality, violence, and oppression is rule. All this is embroidered in the story of Lamech. This is the first man to be mentioned in the Bible to have more than one spouse. He is amassing like real estate. Then he proceeds to sing a brief song about being far more violent and unforgiving than Cain has ever been. Following this, we have an odd story concerning the sons of God, which can be referring to angels, evil beings, or could also refer to the kings of old who claimed to descend from gods, but most likely it's referring to fallen angels. Like Lamech, they had many wives and produced children which were called Nephilims, who became mysterious beings that were large, strong, and considered warriors. The point is that human beings were building kingdoms that were saturating God's world with violence and corruption. In response, we're informed that God is overwhelmed with sadness that the humans are ruining this good world, and they're ruining one another. In an intense desire to safeguard the goodness of the world, he cleanses the world of evil with a massive flood that covers the entire world, also known as the Great Flood. However, he is able to protect one innocent man who we know as Noah and his family. Then God entrusts Noah as the new Adam or Adam. He recites the divine blessing and then commands him to travel out into the world. Our expectations are high. However, Noah also fails, and ironically, also in the garden. Noah ends up creating a vineyard, but ultimately is found drunk out of his mind there. Ham, one of Noah's sons, finds him highly intoxicated in the tent and does something shameful to Noah. And so, there is the new Adam, who ends up naked, afraid, and ashamed, just like the first Adam. So the downward spiral starts all over again. This all will lead to the founding of the city of Babylon. The people of the ancient Mesopotamia discovered this new technology called a brick. They are able to make cities and towers larger and more quickly than anything else ever. They are planning to build an entirely new type of tower that can reach all the way to the gods, and by doing so, they will make a great name for themselves. This again is an image of humankind being rebellious and arrogant. So God humiliated them and sent them scattering. It's a wide collection of stories, but you'll see that they're all looking at the same idea. God continues to give humans the opportunity to be good citizens in this world, but humans continue to destroy the world. These stories make the claim to be living in a perfect world, but we've turned it bad. That we've all chosen to define good and evil for ourselves, and so we all continue to contribute to this world of broken relationships. This can lead to conflicts and violence, which eventually leads to the death. There's still hope. God has promised that one day a descendant would come, the wounded victor who can defeat evil at the source. In spite of the sins of mankind, God is determined to be blessing and a rescuer to this world. The big question is, what is God going to do? The next set of chapters provide some answers to that question. However, for the moment, that's the Genesis chapters 1 through 11 story is all about. So let's review. In the opening chapters of the Bible, God creates the world and brings us forth to join Him in furthering creativity. He creates us in His image to exercise dominion, to be fruitful and multiply, to receive His provision, to work in relationship with Him and with other people, and to observe the limits of His creation. He equips us with resources, abilities, and communities to fulfill these tasks, and gives us the pattern of working towards them 6 days out of the 7. He gives us the freedom to do these things out of love for Him and His creation, which also gives us the freedom to not do the things for which He created us. To our lasting injury, the first human beings chose to violate God's mandate, and people have continued to choose to disobey to a greater or lesser degree to the present day. As a result, our work has become less productive, more toilsome, and less satisfying, and our relationship and work are diminishing and at times even destructive. Nevertheless, God continues to call us to work, equipping us and providing for our needs. And many people have the opportunity to do good, creative, fulfilling work that provides for their needs and contributes to a thriving community. The fall has made the work that began in the Garden of Eden more necessary, actually not less. Although Christians have sometimes misunderstood this, God did not respond to the fall by withdrawing from the material world and confining His interest to the spiritual. Nor is it possible to divorce the material and the spiritual anyway. Work, including the relationships that pervade it and the limits that bless it, remains God's gift to us, even if it is severely marred by the conditions of an existence after the fall. At the same time, God is always at work to redeem His creation from the effects of the fall. Genesis chapters 4 through 11 begins a story of how God's power is working to order and reorder the world and its inhabitants. God is sovereign over the created world and over every living creature, human and otherwise. He continues to tend to His own imagery in humanity, but He does not tolerate human efforts to be like God in order either to acquire excessive power or to substitute self-sufficiency for relationship with God. Those like Noah who receive work as a gift from God and do their best to work according to His direction find blessing and fruitfulness in their work. Those like the builders of the Tower of Babel who try to grasp power and success on their own terms find violence and frustration, especially when their work turns toward harming others. Like all the characters in the chapters of Genesis, we face the choice of whether to work with God or in opposition to Him. How the story of God's work to redeem His creation will turn out is not told in the book of Genesis, but we know that it ultimately leads to the restoration of creation, including the work of God's creatures as God has intended from the beginning.